Today we're going to work on heel part 2 with Maverick. This entails layering in the verbal cue, so we'll actually have a word to trigger the behavior. And then we're going to layer in left turns and right turns, as well as the auto sits, which Maverick already does on his own, but I will also show you how to correct that should he break the position, because heel is a package. Heel means walk with me, stay with me, sit when I stop. So when we cue the word heel, that's when the dog is expected to walk in that strict fashion. If the dog has not been cued in any command, the dog is free to walk as they please. So a common complaint that we get with our clients is when they release the dog will pull them and kind of drag them all over the place. And I'll tell them, well, technically speaking, the dog's allowed to do that because they're not under command. So then clients will comment on they don't need a very strict heel where the dog is walking tight next to them. They just don't want the dog to pull as much. And I always tell people dogs are simple creatures. They're either pulling or not pulling, okay? When the dog is under command, they're not pulling. If they're not under command, technically speaking, they can pull, because pulling is not a bad thing to a dog, okay? That's a human concept. So this is where, like your tool with the prong collar, I do have Maverick on his prong collar today, because in the next video I'm going to record, I'm going to need it. But the prong collar does help alleviate some pulling. In some cases where when the owner releases the dog, when the dog goes to forage, they'll be confronted with the leash pressure or the prong pressure, which will motivate them to take off some of that pushing pressure that they're putting into the prongs themselves. If that continues to be a problem, you can let me know, and it's something that I can show you guys how to correct. We can only correct it to a certain degree, okay? So here, the first part's fairly simple. I'm going to cue the word heel, and I'm going to lead with my left leg, okay? So in more advanced training, left leg means walk with me, right leg means don't move. It sounds super fancy, but it's really just making sure that every time you cue the heel cue, you're always leading with that left leg, and then when you use the stay cue, you're leading with the right leg, okay? And technically speaking, you're leading with the leg away from the dog. So if Maverick were to be to my right and I said stay, technically I would lead with the left leg because he's to my right side. Okay, so there is some exceptions there, but almost always with training the dogs to our left, so when we do stay, we're leading with the right leg. Or if Maverick is in a heel, he auto sits if I tell him to down. Right now he's in a stationary command because that overrides the heel. I would still lead with that right leg. So anytime I'm putting the dog in a stationary command and I have to leave them, I'm leading with the leg away from them, okay? So again, heel is a package, walk with me, stay with me, sit when I stop. And yesterday's, for his first day, we were working on teaching him to pay attention, to follow our lead. You know, we ended up in that 50s range, which I'm currently at 51, as I found the working level prior to starting this video. So going forward, if you do not say heel when you walk with Maverick, he is not expected to walk in this strict fashion, okay? So I always recommend for my clients that they practice an 80-20 rule, 80% work to 20% play. So if we go on a walk with our dog and it's an hour-long walk, 80% of that walk would be in a heel position, 20% would be you're free to be a dog, okay? The reason why we do this is most people want to give their dog freedom all the time and only have these very small instances and windows of control, and they get upset when the dog is not responsive, and it's because they're used to doing what they want all the time, or at least 99% of the time. So we want to flip that, and we want to practice control at least 80% of the time, and then 20% of the time the dog gets freedom, so the day that we need the dog to be under control on a whim, so to speak, the dog is going to adhere to the command because they're used to, you know, not only performing the task, but adhering to the behavior itself. So the rule of walk with me, stay with me, sit when I stop. Okay, so here with Maverick, this first part's going to be simple. I'm currently set to 51, 5-1. So I'm going to cue the word heel first, and then I'm going to lead with the left leg. All my turns stay the same. Okay, now as you can see, Maverick is in the habit of already automatically sitting, which is good. If Maverick were to not auto sit or forget or break the command, I would lightly pull up, tap on the collar, and press down the hindquarters to create the sitting position. Same thing if he lays down. In the first day, I didn't care when Maverick laid down there in the heel because we hadn't covered the auto sits yet. Like right now, he's laying down. We've not covered it yet. But going forward, now that we've formally covered it, I expect the dog to stay in a sitting position when we're in the heel, okay? So I'm going to cue the word heel first. Heel, lead with the left leg. I walk for a little bit, slow turn. He turns with me, very good. I slow to a stop. He automatically sits, and then I can give the praise. Good boy. Wait a moment. Heel, left leg. Okay, so there is no tap on the collar when we're doing the heel, when we initiate it, but I will tap if the dog delays. Okay, so delay would be when I come to a stop, he auto sits, this is good. I say heel, I go left leg, and I'm already on the right leg and the dog isn't moving. By the third step, I'm tapping to bring the dog forward. I would not repeat the command to get them to move forward, and I would not reverse to the dog to get them to correct it, because sometimes clients will do that. Where if the dog doesn't move, they'll walk backwards and like get the dog's attention and pat and say heel and then lead again. We do not do that, okay? So here, tap, tap, good, good. Maverick goes to lay down without any cues. I don't say sit, I don't say heel. I lightly pull up, I tap on the collar to create the sitting position, okay? The reason why we don't say sit here is because we're not correcting the sit command, we're correcting the heel. We're correcting the auto sit, okay? So, and we don't say heel because heel doesn't mean to sit. Heel means walk with me, sit when walk with me, stay with me, sit when I stop, okay? So it's a package of behaviors. So here, when the dog breaks position, if they lay down or stand up, we simply tap and pull up on the collar to reinforce the sitting position. I don't need them to be perfect. This would be perfect heel position here, okay? I don't need this. I just need the dog to the left of me, okay? And in time, as he gets more conditioned and more training and more experience, we're gonna start to see more of a parallel to us, okay? But for now, this is perfectly fine. Heel. So in the beginning, if the dogs line up incorrectly, I've learned to not be too strict, because if I'm too strict, it's too much information. Boy, it's too much information, heel, for them to grasp onto, and they'll get frustrated a lot of times because they can't figure it out. Tap, tap. So I've learned that just by ignoring it a majority of the time, we'll start to see the dog lining up to us more parallel. Okay, we'll do a couple more. Heel, left leg. He turns with me, no need to do anything. Slow, stop, good. Yeah, boy, we'll do one more. Heel. Very good. So that's the easy part, right? Cueing the word heel, leading with the left leg. So that turns the exercise on. So if you walk out your door, Maverick's got the equipment on, everything's ready to go, and you've not said a thing, he is a free dog. He can pull, he can sniff, he can pee, he can poop, he can do his own thing. The moment I cue heel is when I expect the dog to walk with me in this strict fashion. Let's say we walk for 20 minutes. We get to a patch of grass and I want to give Maverick a break. I would come to a stop. He should automatically sit. I wait a moment, break, and then lead him to the grass to give him that freedom. Okay, so we have an on and off switch. And break is our universal "you are done" command. So whether the dog's in a place or a sit or a down, when we cue break, it means your job is done. So now, in the heel, there are two major types of turns. There's the pivot turn and the crossover turn. Tap, 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 tap. There he goes. I'm not going to care about that for now. There's a pivot turn and the crossover turn. The pivot turn is the same turn that we use to correct Maverick for passing, where we're doing that immediate 180 turn to the right, always to the right. So we keep the dog on the outside so they line up to our left side. The crossover turn, he already wants to lay down, is when we're turning left, crossing over the dog, okay? So we lead these turns with the leg opposite to the turn. So when we're turning right, we lead it with the left leg. When we're turning left, we lead it with the right leg, okay? So the pivot turn would be forward on left, back on right, forward on left. Now I'm going the opposite way. Again, we slow down, get the dog's attention, left, right, left, okay? So it's good to note that every time we come to a stop and or a turn, we always slow down first to give Maverick, tap, 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 There we go. To give Maverick the opportunity to follow us. So if I am walking with Maverick and I always abruptly stop, he's not going to have enough of a heads up to catch what I'm doing. He's going to bypass me. That's handler error. Okay, they did not communicate what they were doing, so the dog made a mistake. But we would still have to correct the behavior. Okay, even though it's your fault, you still have to correct the behavior. So by slowing down, it gives Maverick a heads up. He goes, hey, something is changing. It gets his attention. If he's paying attention, he should slow down with us. And because he's paying attention and slowing down, it allows the dog to see the movement. Okay. Same thing for the crossover turn. If I slow down, Maverick should also slow down. And then I'm gonna time my movement so that I cross very sharp 90-degree cut with the right leg, left leg, cross again with the right leg to be going the opposite way. Okay. So one is very linear, takes us straight back, whereas the other one is kind of like a box, half square shape, because you're doing 90-degree cut, step, 90-degree cut to turn us around, okay? If I slow down to do a crossover and Maverick is still going, a lot of clients will try to pull the dog back and like make these very big awkward steps to compensate for the dog passing. We do not do that. If I slow down and he keeps going, even though my intention is to left turn, I would turn to the right, tap to correct the dog and bring him to my side, okay? And then turn around and then attempt again. There's no point in trying to complete the turn if the dog is not in position, okay? So here you can see he's wanting to lay down here, okay? But he's doing his best to hold, so that's good. So we're gonna start first with the pivot turns. That's gonna be left, right, left, making an about face pivot. Heel. Left, right, left. Good. He turns with me, nothing happens. So you can see nice and relaxed with the leash. Slow. Left, right, left. Good. He turns with me, nothing happens. Slow. Left, right, left. Good. Turns with me. Slow. Left, right, left. Good. Tap to speed him up a little bit. There we go. Good. Slow. Left, right, left. He turns again, nothing happens. One more just to turn us around. Very good. Good boy. Okay. So here you can see Maverick doing a lot of this because he's learning this is tied to me to some degree, right? He's learning every time I'm not mindful of you, that thing turns on, I don't like it. How do I get it to turn off and how do I get it to stay off? And it's simply follow my lead. So in heel part one, there's no cues given. It was a lot of just abrupt turns away, tapping on the collar at a working level that made the dog that's low enough that they can think through it, but high enough that they respect it. And because of that, we create the focus very quickly, okay? So now that we have his attention and focus, I can now start using body language to communicate to Maverick to tell him what it is that I'm doing, okay? And the fact that we're indoors does not matter. This applies everywhere. All it comes down to is, are you operating at the number that Maverick needs in order to pay attention, tip, to you for that particular environment? And if you're consistent across the board, in time the application of this becomes less, should go away. And the dog walks with you because he knows you will correct him as needed, to the level needed in order to get him to be compliant, okay? And that's what creates that reliability. So here, doing that left, right, left with the slowdown prior to give him a heads up something is changing. And for now, because he's still being cautious, he's lagging. But in the real world, or when you take him and he's more comfortable with you, you'd most likely see, he's going to be more so here. So when you slow down, you're going to really see the dog's attention kind of come through, okay? So now we're going to go into the crossover turns. We're going to cue the word heel and then lead left leg still. But now I'm going to be going into those left turns where we're crossing over the dog's body, turning to the left, right? So remember, we lead the right turns with the left leg. We lead the left turns with the right leg. Heel. Good. Nice slow. Right, left, right. Good. You can see how he just curves off the body. Nice, slow, right, left, right, good. Right there, he stopped. That's perfectly fine. I don't care what the dog does when I'm doing the crossover. There's sometimes where the dog will even like automatically sit. Good. Here you can see where he kind of stopped there. He kind of paused and he just kind of turned his head, keeping his eyes on me to see what I was doing. That's perfectly fine. Right, left, right. Good. Just like that. So like in cases where we've had dogs sit by accident or by mistake, technically it's incorrect, right? Because we're going to complete the movement, but they don't know that. So in the beginning, they tend to stop because they're confused and they're not sure what to do. Yep. Speed them up a little bit. Right, left, right. But in time, after they see the owner do so many crossovers, they learn they don't need to stop and auto sit. They'll start to naturally just move with the owner. Tip. Tip. Lightly up. Good. Okay. So you can see there, I didn't tell him sit. I just right away started tapping. I tapped 2 times, gave a little bit of leash pressure to guide him to the sitting position. So now he's learning, hey, every time you come to a stop, this is what I'm supposed to do. Okay. So, so as you can see here, it's very fluid. It's very seamless, right? And it's again, the environment doesn't matter. It's the number. Okay, it's the number. So even if I was in a very stimulating, distracting environment with Maverick, let's say right now I'm at 50 for indoors, I assume my number's gonna be higher for outdoors, and let's say he needed 105, and I went to 105, no problem. And I reinforced the heel command with 105. He goes, you know what, 105 is really serious. I don't care about the environment anymore. I care about not having that turn on again. So I'm gonna give you my full attention, despite that there's a bunch of dogs out there and I wanna play with them, right? This overrides all that stuff. So once you have that level of attention, due to the level of pressure, all this stuff just falls into line, okay? And the reason why this progresses so quickly, because even with my clients, when we work at like in the summertime at Oz Park, and it's a completely blank dog, no previous training, behavioral issues a lot of times, it's the owner's first time with e-collar or whatever, we get what you saw in heel, the part 1, done by the end of class 99% of the time. That 1% that I don't get is typically because the behavior is so severe that we're not getting the level of obedience where it needs to be because we're having to deal with the behavior as well. But 99% of the time, doesn't matter. The environment will get the result done, and it's all because I recognize what level the dog needs in order to override the environment, okay? So here, we have now the pivot turn and the crossover turn. So when you're walking with Maverick, let's say you need to turn around, with the pivot turn, if you're on the sidewalk and beside you is busy, the pivot turn keeps you in a single file line. You would stay in your lane, so to speak, and you can make that turnaround without going into people's way. Let's say behind you is busy, but beside you is clear. You would make this turn, so that allows you to turn around without turning into the people behind you. So these turns are meant to be functional. They're meant to keep the heel fluid. If we don't have these turns, what ends up happening is you need to make a turn or change directions. Tip, tip. All right, see what he does. Tip, tip. Lightly up, good. You need to change directions is you'd come to a stop and then you have to like awkwardly reposition and then go the opposite way. By having these movements, it allows you to change directions seamlessly while staying in the heel position, okay? Now, when we're not having to make a hard turn in the opposite direction, we do have a soft left and a soft right. Soft left is easy because you would still just cross with your right leg. You would just continue going straight, okay? When we're making a soft right turn, there's technically 2 approaches. One is to do a similar kind of leg sweep with the left leg turning the opposite way, or you can plant that foot as if you're going to go back, but instead of going back, you go to the right. Because for Maverick, when he sees the foot plant, dip, 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 dip. Good. He's getting frustrated. When he sees the foot plant, that tells him we're doing something, and then he looks at you, but then he just sees you going that way, that he would just follow your lead, okay? So here, right now, when I was correcting Maverick, you start to see him kind of bite the leash and stuff. That's what we call frustration, because I was trying to get him to respond solely to the remote and providing less info with the leash, and that's where the frustration comes from, because I'm putting more on him to figure it out. The reason why I'm doing this is he's clearly knows to auto sit, right? He's aware that that's a thing because he's been offering it willingly since the first lesson, but now I'm just being stricter about it and not allowing him to stand or lay down. So because I'm being stricter and he really just has that one option, is making him frustrated, okay? So it's important that we work through these things, and you can see I took my time, choked on the leash, I still got what I wanted. So then he goes, okay, biting at the leash and being frustrated is not helping the situation, but the moment I give the sitting position, everything turns off. And then once he figures that out, the frustration goes away because he's now aware what the solution is, okay? So when it comes to practicing the heel, again, you're practicing and applying it on every walk going forward, okay? Most people, they'll teach the heel, and then after training is done, they'll go back to their normal, you know, my dog does whatever they want on the walks, and then they see a dog or whatever, tip, 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 pull them in, tip. Good. They see a dog, and then they put the dog in the heel for that, 30 seconds, and then they pass the dog and they go, okay, break, be free again. That's not how this works. In order to keep the function of your obedience, it needs to be used on a regular basis. Again, 80% work to 20% play. 80% work to 20% play. That's a huge amount of time when you're doing things with him to be practicing that control, because again, typically when we need the control to be absolutely reliable, it's in these kind of freak moments. And if it's, okay, do what you want 99.9% of the time, and it's 0.01% of the time I'm gonna need you to do something, it's not gonna work when you really need it to, okay? So by using it regularly and for a majority of the time, it's gonna be functional the day you need it. Now, it's not to say that, let's say it's a beautiful day and you wanna give Maverick a walk where he can just sniff and do whatever he wants the entire hour. Like, I don't care. But the other 99 walks that he's going on, the rest of the month, he's practicing 80% work to 20% play. It's when we start to do every single walk, or 80% of the walks, with do whatever you want with a little bit of control, is where you're working against yourself, okay? So for the heel, anytime you're walking with Maverick, we're employing this command. I understand that sometimes you're just running out to go on a quick little potty break. Obviously, it doesn't really matter there unless we need the dog to do so for like my behavior cases and stuff. But if you're just running outside to the front yard to let Maverick go potty or something, that's fine. With the collar that you have and everything with the prong, you don't have to always put on the remote collar. But if Maverick is a little bit of a menace on those quick little potty breaks, and then it's frustrating to deal with them, then you'll want to put on your collar, because obviously it'll keep them dialed in and keep them under control better than your prong collar. But you're not having to be, with the heel and everything, because you're just really running out. It's more so just there in case he tries to pull too much or anything like that, okay? So otherwise, he's doing very good. So that concludes the heel part 2 portion of this video, and we're gonna come back and work on the stay. Break.